it's lovely, Isabella, to see you in your native habitat.
I don't know if I'd describe the garden my native habitat, because if you ask me any question about a Latin name, I won't be able to answer. But no, this is.
You are so obviously concerned and in tune with the environment. You must be world famous for what you and your husband Charlie have done on the estate and rewilding 3,500 acres, changing the whole biodiversity and hoping to stretch out to the sea. You're hoping to link up with farmers, so you'll run on down to the sea. I mean, that is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, we've realised that, we've now created this amazing, or nature has created this amazing biodiversity hotspot, just given the time and the chance to do so.
Yes.
But, where do we go from here? And so I think the next step for us is connecting with other landowners, farmers, gardeners, and creating wildlife corridors so that you can connect areas of nature together again. And one of these corridors is going down to the sea. We have a wonderful farmer on the coast who is dedicating some of his fields to return to salt marsh, and he's allowing floodplains to revert and that kind of thing. So it's about finding space for nature and finding partners you can work with. And gardeners are a big part of that. And our Wheel to Waves project, it's called. We've got over 300 gardeners who are doing stuff for nature in their gardens to be part of this wildlife corridor.
This is your private bit of garden here, and this is quite different. So this is gardened, but obviously with your diversity hat on. You've got quite a bit of structure here. You've got these lovely sort of caterpillars of box and you running around under this fabulous cedar. But then you've got the wider landscape, which is just to die for, the Repton Parkland. So this is like the anteroom, isn't it, before you go into the wall garden? And I love these magnificent oaks. Tell me about this space.
Well, I mean, I love the way you describe that, because I've never really thought of it like that. But it is exactly what it is. We're moving from the rather formal garden into the wilder space of our walled garden. And I guess this is our first statement about rewilding. So this was, this oak came down, I suppose, 2 years ago. It was looking as healthy as these, and suddenly, for no apparent reason, just toppled. But it did so considerately. It didn't fall on the wall. It didn't fall on the hedge, and we thought, well, let's leave it because it'll be fantastic habitat as it rots down. We are counting the species that are now colonising it. We've got fixed point photography on it, so over about 20 years it'll look rather amazing seeing it rot down.
Yes.
But it's a kind of statement that actually learning to live with dead things is a really big part of rewilding. So when we did finally look at this sort of black hole and think how we're going to create a garden design for the modern day with our kind of needs, which are much reduced, Georgia Langton did the initial design. But when we rethought it a couple of years ago, we thought, let's just do something radically different. So what we've done here with Tom Stuart-Smith, who has, a great friend and who designed the garden for us, is create something that's much more hospitable to insects, burrowing, beetles, spiders, everything else. And he calls this his dirty path. So the path is pretty much kept with the passage of feet.
So it's a breed and gravel. So it's the bound gravel with the clay fines, so it packs down.
Exactly.
Yes.
A bit of weeding done in the middle here, but the rest of it, you're really allowing. You're establishing some plants that you want to be here. You've got your creeping thymes, you've got your herbs, that kind of thing, the low-lying plants. But you're allowing the seed rain to come in and for your wildflowers to establish. And as long as they don't become too thuggish, we have a tolerance for our native wildflowers, our weeds, because they're so supportive of wildlife.
I have to say, I'm disappointed that I can't find many groundsel dandelions. Oh, I can see a ragwort, yes. So they have, I mean, it looks charming, but they have pulled out some of them, haven't they? They are manipulating it.
And so this time of year, particularly. But so you're manipulating, and so it's not about hands off.
Yeah.
It's actually just as much hands-on probably as a conventional garden, but you're just thinking with the mindset of what is going to bring the most plants, the most diversity into this space.
And things like aesthetics. So if I was in a more old-fashioned style garden, should we say, I would cut off the dead heads of that
Exactly.
euphorbia and things, but you're leaving it all
Yeah.
because you're celebrating the fact that it's seeding and the diversity. So this is your old pool. So this was here
This was
before.
here, exactly, and so were the cypresses.
Yes. And so then with this, which was pancake flat,
Yeah.
you came in with a digger and you added, what did you
Yeah.
add?
So this
You strip
on,
off the
on
topsoil.
On the other side, yes. So
Yeah.
on the other side of the pool was a croquet lawn. So
Yeah.
monoculture lawn, you know, sort of intensely tended. You know, you can
Yes.
imagine. So a biological desert.
Fertiliser.
Fertilizer,
Weed killer.
watering, weed
Yes.
killer, everything.
Yeah.
And so we put this challenge to James Hitchmough in particular, who was working with Tom Stuart-Smith on the design of this garden. Our priorities were how could we create a garden for wildlife, but also one that needs no inputs or few inputs, because we just feel, you know, we're in a water neutrality zone here in Sussex. We're over extracting water. We just cannot afford that luxury of watering our gardens anymore.
Just explain water neutrality to me.
It's where, because we're over extracting water and we can't take any more out, if you were to build a new house or even a granny flat,
Yeah.
you can only get planning permission if you can demonstrate you won't be taking any more water out of the aquifer.
So you
So-
are using your runoff.
And grey water and
Yeah.
everything else. Yeah,
Lovely.
or making savings elsewhere.
Yes.
So we cannot take any more water out of the system. And so if you're creating a new garden, you really shouldn't be creating a garden now that needs watering. And so James came up with this brilliant idea. Well, you've got a lot of rubble and concrete on this site where we've been creating a restaurant and cafe in there. Why don't we just crush all that up and dump it, 400 tons of it,
Yeah.
on your croquet lawn? And that way you can create mounds and humps and hollows. So you're creating a topography that in itself will lend itself to a kind of creating a mosaic of habitat. So you're creating different conditions for plants. From the north face to the south face, you can have different pH values on those ridges. So some will have just sand, some will have nothing, some will have a little scattering of topsoil. So basically you've got all different conditions. You're creating a matrix of conditions in your garden, and then you're planting with, I think we've planted about 1,700 plants. So they're all kind of
1,700 different types of
Types of
plants.
plants.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
So from dry zones in the world, so from the Mediterranean, from Australia, South Africa, even we've got a lot of American prairie grasses. And so you're trying to stuff this area with as many plants as you can to create the biodiversity that the insects themselves will benefit from.
Yes.
So James Hitchmough puts it brilliantly, I think. He says, you know, if I'm going to ask you to fill a bath full of balls, you wouldn't fill it full of footballs or rugby balls. You'd fill it full of golf balls or marbles. You know, you choose the smallest plants, and those would be the dry-loving plants, the desert plants, the alpine plants, and you can fit many more species into that space if they're tiny. But they all have wonderful flowers, they're all fantastic for pollinators, but for also thinking about the predators, the kind of, you know, not just the pollinating hoverflies and bees and wasps and that kind of thing, but what about the wolf spiders, what about the earwigs? You know, you're thinking in terms of creating habitat for them as well.
So this is your vegetable garden, and I can see runner beans, I can see Cavolo Nero, I can see things in the fruit cage.
Yes.
So you've got a few vegetables, but you've got a lot of other things. So you're not being too exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, so this is all no dig. It's all on a sort of regenerative principles. But what we're also thinking about is the structure of the vegetation in order to provide habitat for insects again. So you've got your kind of creeping thymes and chamomile and oregano, things, marjoram, through the paths.
Yes.
But then you've also got the sort of higher shrubbier stuff. You've got your lavender here, creating just that step up. So you've got really messy margins, but you've got the vegetation structure, which is what really beneficial for wildlife. But what we're also trying to do is mix your vegetables in with the other flowers and plants. So everything here is, in principle at least, is edible, apart from the yew, which has medicinal properties, I suppose anyway, which is from the old garden.
Yeah.
But so herbs, lots of medieval types of herbs, lots of new different types of vegetables. So it's the edible garden.
I can smell the chamomile,
Yeah,
and I couldn't
standing on
think what it was, but it's you stepping on the chamomile.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm getting this amazing smell, which takes me back to Chelsea when I did dragons covered with chamomile on their backs. And when
Amazing.
we laid them, it was just such a wonderful smell. I love it. I
Amazing.
must get some. Anyway, let's move on to your exciting cafe. So it's a foraging cafe?
No, so this is a cafe. We've got a market garden now,
Yeah.
which is on about 2 acres. Was a absolutely ruined horse paddock.
Yeah.
Now producing about 4 tons of organic vegetables and herbs.
With netting?
No, I'll show you.
Yes.
But we also have a wonderful courtyard that's been designed by Charlie Harper, our head gardener.
Yes.
And again, that is a kind of loose feel
Yes.
to kind of have a sort of a sort of stepping stone into the rewilding project. So it's your first introduction into the rewilding project. But it's a lovely place for people to sit out in the courtyard if it was sunny.
Let's go and have a look. So this is immensely busy. How many people? When did you open?
It's amazing. I mean, we opened, this opened in October last year. And it's been, amazingly successful. I mean, so we're selling the organic fruit and veg and salads and herbs from the market garden. The market garden has only been going 2 years. And that was on we passed it.
Yeah,
It was on that was
phenomenal.
a horse paddock, literally, two
Yes.
years ago. We do sell our meat from the rewilding project. We have to cull the animals because we have to be the wolf.
Yes.
To keep the numbers down. So we sell the free range organic rewilded meat here. But equally, we've got to think about shifting more to a plant-based diet. So let's sell the vegetables that are grown at Knepp as well. Let's think about how we can produce food alongside rewilding. People you can see coming up the path here and up the steps here have probably just been for a walk in the southern block of the rewilding project, and the wildest bit of the rewilding project.
And the footpath comes
And the
all
footpath
way
comes
through.
through.
The caravan is for extra
Yes,
food,
so
is
that's
it?
kind of at the weekends we have drinks and cakes and
Gosh,
coffees
you're like
coming out
this
of
during
there.
the week. You must be
Absolutely
heaving
at weekends.
Heaving at weekends. What I think makes it so extraordinary is you've got this. I love every use of colour with the rustic reds and the roos, but then I can feel the whole wild landscape wrapping around it, and that's what is the thing, isn't it? That's what really does it for me.
Yes, I think that was the challenge: is how you create a space that is a kind of contained and a lovely place where your kids can run around. You can have your dogs tied to your chair or whatever.
Yeah.
But also feeling that the landscape is just a step into the rewilding project.
It does feel that. It really feels like it's coming in, doesn't it? No, it's lovely. Well done. Thank you very much indeed. This is quite extraordinary. It's lovely to see, and I think you're doing a great job. And it would be interesting to see if we had this conversation 50 years' time, if I was still here, if half the country would be this. I mean, obviously we need food and things, but I'm sure that whole thing on the land that is not so good
Yeah.
we will take a different approach, and on our gardens, no doubt.
Well, I think that's exactly what we're trying to prove here, is that, you know, we've shifted from intensive, failing, unprofitable farmland into a rewilding project that is fantastic for biodiversity and for carbon storage. But we're also producing food now intensively in terms of a market garden.
Yes.
And I wish there would be more support for horticulture and for market gardening, because that is where you can produce the most calories of the smallest space. And all those people, you know, struggling, creating, you know, salads and fruit and veg for, you know, local areas. You know, if we just supported horticulture a bit more, I think that would be really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it really is an industry that is not being supported, and it is a huge problem, and it's going to become more so. But the dynamics, the economics of producing horticulture, or producing crops that aren't on a field scale, where you're paying manual labour, is a really difficult one.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Really
and
difficult.
if we're going to have subsidies, that would be a very good place to put them.
And then we would have to be prepared to pay a premium for the organic food like that. Yeah, interesting thoughts. Anyway, thank you very much. It's fabulous to see.
Bonnie, thank
really
you for
impressive.
coming.